Alrighty, welcome back to the channel. Today I am joined with Jimmy. Jimmy, how are you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing very well. It's nice and early for us here, but yeah, we're hanging out. So, yeah, like I said, thanks for joining. You're obviously part of Serpent Column as well as Theophilos, if I'm saying that right.
Theophanous.
Theophanos,
Yeah.
awesome. So yeah, I kind of wanted to start from the beginning. How did you get into like writing and recording your own music?
Um, I mean, the first time I picked up a guitar is like a bass when I was like 12, 13. So I was always like trying to write songs that sounded like Tool or Chevelle or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Um, and then like when I was 16, I got my first guitar, just this like piece of shit Ibanez. So I was like writing stuff in Tablet, just like death metal songs that kind of sounded like The Chasm because I listened to that all the time. Excuse me, at the time. Um, and then, I mean, I never really took guitar too seriously until I was probably about 19 or 20. Um, and then I kind of met a couple really talented engineers when I was in college. And then just everything just kind of spiraled from there with Serpent Column.
Right on, that's awesome. Yeah, I was gonna say I really liked the new album for sure. It's kind of where this whole thing kind of came about, right? So, um, yeah, like I said, let's talk about the new record. How has the reception been so far?
Um, I mean, the reception's been really good. It's just kind of, you know, I just kind of decided to put it up on Bandcamp and streaming and then just figure out physicals later. Um, but it's pretty much gotten everywhere it needs to go.
Who's handling the physical stuff for you?
So I have one label that is going to do tapes, and then another label that's going to do vinyl and CD. I don't think they're ready to make the announcement yet, but the tape should probably be available on a more quicker timetable, like probably within the next month or so. CD and vinyl, sometime next year.
Sweet. Do you do like your own like marketing and stuff? Do you like have to do all the promo emails and everything else like that?
I don't really do too much promo.
Yeah,
Like
that's fair.
kind of, yeah, I just throw it up on Bandcamp and then just kind of, at least for this one, because
Yeah.
I didn't really go with a label. Um, and with promo, it's like it's just hit or miss whether or not it's even going to be worth putting in all the effort. So
Yeah, it's definitely been like for me, we did it ourselves for one record and then we kind of let the record label do it for the other one. And it's interesting seeing the different like it's totally a toss up. It's you send a million emails and you get two responses and whatever, but yeah, it's crazy.
yeah, dude, it's I yeah.
There's no there's no right path. It's always just kind of like I don't know, it's always just a crapshoot. There's no steps to take really. Have
Yeah.
you been able to grow a significant audience just by releasing things and word of mouth?
Um, I mean, back when the first release I did under Serpent Column or New Thalassa, all I did for that was put it up on Bandcamp and just make some forum posts. So like I made a thread on like the old Nuclear War Now forums, and then like Fallen Empire just wanted to put it out. I wound up actually, you know what? I think I might have did like some YouTube songs before I actually like put the record out.
Oh yeah.
And then after I just kind of was talking with labels, Fallen Empire being one of them, I just decided to put it out and see what happened. At the time, it like got picked up by a couple YouTube channels like Odium Nostrum, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was and is still kind of big. I think today, like Rites of Pestilence and a couple other ones are kind of filling that void. I don't know if he's still around actually. But yeah, it just kind of spiraled from there. And Bandcamp, you just it's great for promotion.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, yeah.
Wicked man. Um, Yeah, the whole reason we kind of decided to have this sort of conversation one on one was, I had done this review sort of video, and you noticed it and picked up on it and everything else. So that's really cool, and thanks for checking out the video as well. Um, but we did talk briefly about sort of how vision comes into play as far as like making a record and sort of, especially the process of taking it from the beginning to the end. I think it's really interesting for me as somebody who does, my own music and everything else. Um, but I did want to kind of ask again how you take your vision of a record from the early stages of writing and taking it through the recording process to completion. If you could like kind of describe how you do that and go about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, you always just have to start somewhere with, whether it's just a single riff, collections of riffs and passages. Um, with most of my records, at least under Serpent Column, I usually write a lot of material in advance and just kind of just on guitar, basically. I'll either demo it on my iPhone or just memorize passages. For this record, it was mainly just I would memorize as much as I felt was necessary, and then just kind of start hacking it out in Cubase, the DAW that I use.
Right,
Um,
right.
yeah, so I mean, basically, yeah, you just kind of have to start somewhere.
Somewhere.
And typically, it's not really. I don't really put too much conscious thought into like writing the riffs. Like it's just this sounds good and it's cool and like makes me laugh. Basically, like
Wicked.
if I'm just like if that happens, I know it's like it's a good riff. So
No, that's sick.
yeah.
I mean, I definitely feel you as far as like where a song comes from, right? Like generally it comes from a riff or it comes from an idea. For me, and I don't know if this is the same for you, when you write something and you sort of have something in your head, right? Where you can almost picture how a song is going to go, or you feel like this one riff, maybe we'll take it in this direction. Do you ever have those moments of like decision making where you're like, I have this riff, but maybe I want to change how the next passage goes? Maybe you see a little bit of like a timeline of like, I can see how this would build up into something, and then sort of, mapping it out like that. Is that ever something that comes into play for you?
Um. Yeah. I mean, when I'm let's say I'm like I've kind of got most of the structure of a song down. I can see different potential ways that it could go. Um, and usually I'll just kind of like explore a couple avenues and then whatever feels best and kind of like makes sense for the overall character of the song is usually what I go with. Like as long as it feels like sufficiently original and like sufficiently interesting, like I'll go with it.
Cool. That makes a lot of sense for sure. Um, as far as the new record, Tassel of Aries, how does it stack up in terms of like we were mentioning vision? How does it stack up to you in terms of your original vision for an album and sort of how it went at, sort of towards the end, right?
So basically when I was starting to write it back in like March and April of this year, excuse me, I was just kind of getting more interested in playing material that was kind of like my first record. Basically, it's all written in E standard. All the songs are just kind of longer, and I was just like, what if I can make, what if I can make songs on a larger scale, even,
Right.
and just try and just kind of like challenge myself with that. Um, so I think for me, it ended up sounding close to the original vision. Like I knew I wanted something. I knew I wanted a song that was almost like 20 minutes long,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
uh, basically. And I think, I think if I do like an EP or something after this, it might just be kind of like a 20 to 25-minute song, just kind of like I by Meshuggah.
Cool.
Um, but yeah, I mean, every record kind of has its own life. It's just kind of like a playthrough of a game or something. It's like um, you get to make decisions, and the nice thing is you can just make another record.
It's true.
So
For sure. No,
yeah.
that's cool. Did anything sort of like externally inspire this record? Like maybe something you heard, or like whether it's a band or music or anything like material, anything like that?
I think for me, like the last few years, I've been listening to a lot of stuff like early Slayer,
Right.
Dissection, Mayhem, Sacramentum,
Classics.
Gone. Yeah, just stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Yeah, just, stuff that feels kind of like it's direct. It's it's I don't know. I work out to stuff like that, and I kind of wanted something that just felt like it, basically.
No, that's cool. It's interesting hearing something like Slayer come up with this one, just because it's so technical. Did you have any like um, I guess inspirations, but I guess also like guitar heroes or anything like that, where it's like I like how this person plays. You sort of mirror it a little bit or whatever. Is anything like that for you?
Um, I mean, for this record, not really
Not
anybody
really.
in particular. I mean, whenever I hear solo on like those early Slayer records, or like or like a band like Revenge, when I listen to like the solos on some of those records, it's just like ridiculous. Like I kind of I wanted to like kind of emulate that feeling.
I love
Um,
those sort of like noisy, like it's just notes. It's just crazy. I love that kind of stuff.
yeah, Trey Isaac-Thoth kind of like
Yeah, it,
it's yeah,
it almost shouldn't make sense, and then somehow it does.
yeah.
That's wicked.
Yeah.
Um, what do you use as far as gear when you're recording or writing or anything like that?
Um, I mean, I've gone through so many different guitars, but I kind of have settled on just like Ibanez RGs. The Prestiges are just like phenomenal guitars. They're just like
Yeah,
extremely comfortable. The construction is just like very reliable, very just like it feels like you're holding like a piece of art, basically. I don't know if you've played any of those, but
I've got a couple Ibanez's, and the other guitar player in my band swears by them. He has like an AZ that he loves and everything
yeah.
else. They're great like workhorse guitars because they can take quite a beating. I've had my one Ibanez that I've taken on the road since like I think I've owned it for like 15 years or something now, and it's like I've never really had to get it like serviced too much. So they last. They're great made guitars.
What model?
It's an RG. I can't remember exactly.
They have all this crazy names.
Yeah, it's the numbers and then some letters. I don't know.
Yeah, but
But
yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, no, I was just gonna say, yeah, they're cool guitars. What kind of plugins do you like to use as far as like finding a sound and everything like that?
Um, so um, for basically all my records since Ornuthi Thalassa, that was actually recorded on like a 6505, like a
Okay,
just freaking like Telecaster through 6505. Like, it's always just been direct input. And the amp sims that I pretty much just used for guitar Emissary and some um Kathleen Cabs impulse responses.
okay, yeah,
Sometimes I'll mess around from record to record. For this one, really, it was just that, and then like reamped, just to get kind of like the texture of a room.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
I think we. What do you think about like the digital rigs now? There's sort of like there's two schools of thought of like the classic analog amps versus like the fractals or the helixes, whatever, what have you. I find them quite interesting just because it's super easy to record yourself. You plug it in and you get a fairly decent tone from next to nothing. But yeah, I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
For me, not surprisingly, I'm like a minimalist when it comes to gear.
Yeah, yeah.
So like I've always wanted to just like keep things able, just I wanted to have it pared down so I can just keep everything in like a second bedroom.
Right.
Because a lot of these records I just made when I was living in apartments and school and just like, working shitty jobs, just
Totally.
So for me, it's like my some of my friends, they have like they collect gear and just have like all this crazy like cool gear, and it's like I like to go to them when I like want something reamped.
Mm.
It's like they'll like put things in front of me that I would never really select otherwise. But like myself, like if it sounds really good and like it just kind of works, I'm just gonna kind of
Just go with it.
basically, yeah.
Tr- Trust your ears. I like that. Um, we talked also a little bit about drum programming. I know that you use program drums, but I do see the little electronic kit in the background.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
use that at all, or like are you trying to learn drums? Are you?
So I've had that since maybe like 2018, and
Yeah,
that's I thought maybe I would get to the point where yeah, I'm just gonna play drums on the records, kind of like do the Jeff Whitehead thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but I like I got to the point with drum programming where it would take just as like as much time like trying to track them than like the tedious like process that I already do. So um the what I do currently just kind of works for me, and it's just kind of fun, and it's also like a workout to play an e-kit.
Yeah, that's true.
Doesn't piss neighbors too much like a analog
It's
acoustic kit.
true.
Yeah.
Well, especially if you're living in an apartment, that makes sense.
I mean, I live in a house, so
Well,
but
then, right.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, what is your sort of process for programming your drums? You mentioned it to me, but even hearing about it, I'm not quite sure.
So when people think drum programming, they think like in the late 90s, early 2000s, just like two samples or whatever, just like really shitty, like just
Yeah.
crap. Like it's so I use right now I use Superior Drummer. I've used that since Cathodos,
Mhm.
the last Serpent Column LP. Basically, how I do it now, and this hasn't always been the case, I'll play a passage on guitar, you record that in the Cubase. Cubase is a detect tempo function.
Mm.
So I'll find like the best like part of that passage rhythmically. If it's like a complete, sometimes I have to like stitch it together to get it to work. Just really depends on the passage because
Yeah.
the detect tempo function isn't always great, especially when the riffs get kind of weird. Um, but yeah, so I'll do that, and then you can just kind of directly map the drums onto the that part of the tempo map. So like what people like tend to do is they'll play a guitar riff, tap it out,
Yeah.
and like that's their tempo map. For me, I did that for Anuthi Thalassa, and I felt like it didn't like the riffs didn't feel like they had a natural character. So I was always trying to, and this is just basically how I figured out how to preserve that.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So and then I'll just build the track basically just like bit by bit, even if I have it all like written in advance. And the cool part is like sometimes um it'll go in different like I'll start writing in a different direction just based on like
How the drums go.
yeah.
Okay.
Instead of just like trying to force everything that I've like pre-written into that because it's I don't know, it's a medium, I guess.
Do you get that sort of almost live flow of like various tempos when you do it like that, or is it like you
Yeah.
do get end up kind of getting that?
Yeah, I mean, I can make it sound very natural. It's just like extremely time consuming.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, I don't notice how much time I spend just trying to get the drums to sound right, but it's a shitload of time. Um, yeah,
I can only imagine for sure. How long does it take you to record an album then? Roughly.
dude. This one is like, uh, I mean, 39 minutes of music, right? And
Yeah.
maybe I had like 45 recorded. It took me 6 months of just like waking up 2 hours early almost every day and just like not hanging out with just basically trying to like focus on it. Yeah, I mean this one took 6 months, roughly speaking. That's pretty typical. I mean, just it just
Right.
depends. Like for Theophanous, it's kind of more like my running journal. So That's songs that I compile over years. Um, it depends. It just takes a fuckload of time, no
Yeah,
matter
fair
what.
enough.
Like,
I can only imagine because like even for me when I do demos or whatever, I use Guitar Pro, and even that I hate doing. So
yeah. Did you
totally.
ever use Tabit?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, that it's even harder. Actually, you know
Okay.
what? Guitar Pro is. I've tried to demo stuff in Guitar Pro, and I'm just fuck this.
It's just a lot of like, okay, the snare is 40, so I'm typing 40s going like this on the keyboard.
Yeah,
Stupid.
yeah.
So let's talk about mixing and mastering. I think we sort of talked. You do most of the stuff now, like pretty much everything nowadays, besides like reamping and stuff like that. Um, was there a particular reason why you went in that direction as opposed to like hiring third party like engineers or mixers or anything like that?
Um, I kind of so first off, it's cost efficient. Like I don't have to do sessions with somebody. And second off, I don't really trust my work with somebody else. And also, like a lot of it gets written and finalized in the mixing stage. So, like a lot of the extra instruments and just like additions and reshaping of passages happens like as I'm still figuring out how the record's supposed to sound. So I don't really want to drag somebody through that process, and I don't have like the money to do that either. So,
Totally
um,
fair. Well, and I
yeah.
can imagine, like how you said, if doing it that way, there's no way to have somebody else work on it. Do you have anything that's like your go-to techniques as far as how you like to lay out your tracks or anything on the sort of more technical side of things?
Yeah, so the the typical way I do it now, because like I learned better habits from Maya, kind of like assist me with production.
Okay,
Uh,
that's cool.
she's like expert with Cubase, has been using it since like for fucking ever, basically.
Right on.
Um, I just kind of, obviously have just like a bunch of like group tracks and master buses. And then for like individual instruments, I'll just try to keep it as simple as possible. I feel like, the less you can chase your tail, the better, because things can just get like really hairy quickly when you're working on something.
Yeah, definitely. That's cool. You said I think before you like two tracks of rhythm guitar.
Yeah, typically, usually just the same amp sim with maybe just different cab loaders or impulsors, whatever the fuck they're called. And then like just some, reamp tracks, typically like, good like room mics, right? Like, um, just to give it some extra texture. But really, you don't really need too much after that. Bass is a little tricky because like the older amps, especially the ones that like come with a lot of DAWs, are just like shit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I use like a bunch of different ones that I found.
That's cool.
Like
Um,
grind machine is one that I think I don't know who makes it, but I don't think they make it anymore, or maybe it's like a different version. But it sounds so fucking good for one of the
oh,
bass channels. It's just like really like disgusting sounding.
hell yeah, that's awesome. What about for like recording vocals? Do you record vocals at your house or?
Yeah, I mean, I used to, so when I used to live in an apartment, I used to just like drive out to parking lots. Like, and I was
Oh
living
yeah,
at the time, like I made most of SERPENT COLUMN records when I was living in southwestern Pennsylvania. So I just drive out to like abandoned like Walmart parking lots or like whatever, and just like I had this shitty. Well, it's not shitty. I mean, it's just like this broken down Heil PR 40, and
okay, right
I've
on.
just used that for the past forever. It's just such a good mic for what I'm doing.
Wicked.
But yeah,
I've definitely felt the pain. I was like recording vocals at apartment and like it's during the day, so I'm like everybody's at work. I'm not going to pay attention and
yeah,
like I'm just going
yeah.
to do it as fast as I can.
Yeah, I used to take like my laptop. Yeah. You put the air conditioning on like really high, or like,
Something like that.
yeah,
Stuff
yeah,
myself in a closet maybe and
yeah. They have those like mini booths that you can like put. but it's I don't know. I
I
just fuck it. Why even like just take a laptop and your interface and just like drive out somewhere. Cops have like given me shit for it before. It's like
oh really?
I had
Fuck.
to like explain myself.
Like, why are you making so much fucking noise?
Like, what are you doing here? Like,
Yeah.
what is that? I'm like, I'm not like a form spy or anything. Leave me alone.
That's awesome. So sort of in relation to vocals, black metal, extreme metal, the lyrics are largely incoherent for the most part. You either have to look them up or you have to like really pay attention to try to even find little phrases here and there. Um, I know for me, lyrics are quite important. But sort of what role do lyrics play in your music, and are they important to you as well?
So it's different for Serpent Column than Theophanous, right?
For sure.
So Theophanous is more just like that's more conventional. Just lyrics just match like what I'm saying, basically.
Yeah.
Um, for Serpent Column, because it's kind of like the structures are kind of um like the music is kind of more like pure music, right? Um, it just it's too awkward to have like all the lyrics enunciated. It would just be kind of weird. So I kind of just have like a base text that goes with all the records. And I just kind of borrow from that. I don't, not everything gets said, obviously. Sometimes I just use old vocal samples. Like I have a couple folders of just like stuff from Mirror and Darkness and just like other
Okay.
records that I still like just use today. So vocals are, for Serpent Column, it's you have to have it. It's just like it's part of the texture.
Mm,
But you know, it I just can't get you know lyrics to work, and it's not like Deicide or something like that.
fair enough.
Um, it just feels different.
Totally. That's cool. It's interesting because I know a lot of bands now, especially, are basically like, there are no lyrics. It's, noises or whatever else. But it is funny that I'm not as big of a fan of like instrumental music. So it's funny to me that I can't largely tell what they're saying, but at the same time, it's important that they're singing. Um, anyway, I just think that's kind of funny. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Or like I don't know if you're into like Converge or whatever, but
a little bit,
like
yeah,
yeah, some of those records he's just like just wailing, like it's just using his voice as an instrument basically. Like a lot of I don't know, even like popular singers or it's even like bands like Deathspell, right? Like half the lyrics are just not even said on those records. It's just like you get the base text. It's just part of like the multimedia package.
totally.
And same with like the visuals and the booklets and everything. It's all part of the experience.
It's true. It's something even present from like the '60s when people are doing like the la 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 or that kind of thing, just sort of vocalizing melodies or anything like that. Um,
Yeah, like I don't know, like Steve Reich or Bill Glass or yeah,
well, even
just
Michael Ackerfeld too. Like he does the
yeah, yeah,
whole.
yeah,
It's definitely a thing, right?
yeah.
Um, do you prefer working on music alone? Is it a matter of convenience, and would you ever like work in collaboration with others? Is that something that's interesting to you?
Um, every time I try it, it doesn't work out because it winds up being about something other than the music. That's just been my experience. So I just try to keep, I try to farm stuff out if I need something done that like I can't really do here at home,
Right.
but I don't really like need help writing a record. I don't really need people to play on it. Like to me, it sounds sufficiently good, and if it just takes more time, I feel like working with people probably takes just as much time or even more.
Yeah, potentially.
It depends on the group. I mean, you're in a band, so you know how it goes, and you're in a couple bands. So
Definitely. I will say I do like the collaborative aspect, but I do make sure that I have some projects that, are for me. Um, just because like people think in different ways. So if it depends on like what the goal of the music is as well, but if the goal is to make a song as good as you can, or especially if you have to consider the collaboration aspect. I do think it's interesting that I'll play something and then the other guitar player or the bassist or something will have a totally unique idea that is totally separate from anything that I would have thought of. Um, and I think it helps sort of rewire my brain in particular as far as expanding things that I could use, kind of a thing. But it is interesting because, at the same time, it does sort of dilute your own uh, creative intention, I suppose. So it's a bit of a give and take for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me it really it tends to complicate the process. So if I want to get and I've jammed with people over the years that I've had good experiences,
Totally.
good, bad, ugly, everywhere in between. Um but like for me if I want to like get new ideas, I'll typically just like learn or just like try to learn something by ear.
No, that's cool.
And that usually just kind of like that broadens my perspective.
Wicked for sure. I wanted to ask as well how much of a factor inspiration is as versus sort of like grinding out a passage or a song. Because I know it can be, sometimes there's a spark of inspiration where something will sort of just come to you and you'll either write it out or play it on guitar, anything like that. Or maybe you're just jamming around and you discover something that, tickles the earworm. But there's also some moments for me where I'll have a riff or something and I want to develop it into something. And sometimes I'll sit there and I'll, play it over and over and over and just try to see if something can come through just sheer will, essentially. I wanted to ask you how that process sort of comes into play for you as well.
Yeah, I mean, you need kind of like different uh, mental states for different tasks, right? So like when you're just trying to like when you're trying to generate a riff, it's more of like a creative state. Like you just have to be kind of either relaxed or you have to be like in some kind of like there has to be some kind of like emotional basis for it.
Gotcha.
Or you're like reacting to something or whatever. And it's like that is like it's really effortless. At least for me, for some people, it's not.
For sure.
A lot of the effort really just comes in just like I spend just like untold hours just practicing, just training, just like doing basically exercises just to like help joints involved and stuff like that. And then like the production aspect, it's also a different mental state. It's more meticulous. Um, but also like there's a lot of again, like I was saying earlier, like when you're mixing stuff together, that's when like the character of a record comes out and
Totally.
like yeah, and then you'll just start adding like extra instruments or just like reshaping passages. You'll try to get like the record to fit together as a cohesive whole. So I don't know, it's a lot to balance. It's just like a lot of skills involved. Um,
It's
yeah,
funny too, because like even that plays into the sort of vision of a record, right? So like you're recording something or anything like that, and you'll hear it basically for the first time with drums, with bass, with vocals, whatever. And then maybe you're like, oh, now I hear this synth thing in my head, and now I have to record that. So it's interesting in that way, as far as like inspiration and vision sort of coming together, right?
yeah. Yeah, and I can see that in Sun Eater too, because it's just like it's very like diverse in terms of influences. All the songs are like they just have a different character. I thought that was really cool with especially the last record.
Wicked, yeah, yeah. Well, same for us. It was a process of a very long recording session, right? So, like and we worked with engineers and stuff like that, who were helpful, but it eventually comes from you, right? But it's funny that as you're recording, this sort of thing develops, and we do edits and we do different things. But it's cool. It all comes together in the end, and sometimes it's totally different than how you thought it would, or sometimes it's more on the money as far as what you were going for. But it is funny how that sort of inspiration kind of can come at any time.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, I mean, even like walking around, like a lot of the honestly for this one, a lot of the riffs and like they were just written when I was just like taking breaks, just like
Yeah.
just you hear passages in your head and you're just like, ah, fuck, I gotta work that out now. I
Yeah.
down like
It's like midnight and you're like, ah, fuck, I have to get up. And
I mean, it sucks. I mean, when I was younger, I had to like figure out ways to like shut that off,
mm,
because it can make you go fucking crazy. Like,
true. Well, it's like, well, then the worst place to like get inspiration is like at work. And then you're like, I'm not even close to anything. I have to like remember this thing for 6 hours or whatever.
or the best if your job fucking sucks. It just fills you with rage.
Just have this riff like the
Yeah.
clapping monkey going in your head. Oh man. Um, so as an independent artist and somebody who works alone and doesn't play live or anything like that, would you measure and define your success? And is that something you still strive to achieve?
I mean, it's more just like, hey, um, I'm just making records that I want to make and sound good to me and sufficiently original. And it's like, I'm gonna do that as long as I possibly can. That to me is success, like not like how well it's received or like what, like it just doesn't matter. Like people are gonna like whether or not like 15 minutes of fame, it doesn't matter. Like
Yeah,
your how many ratings you get on Rate Your Music or whatever. Like none of that shit fucking matters. That's how I've always approached it.
for sure.
Um, and that's kind of why I prefer to work alone because I can stay focused on that and not make it about something else.
Have you noticed a sort of natural evolution or like through the journey of just making music has the definition of like what you want to achieve sort of changed over time?
Um, Definition of what I want to achieve. I mean,
Or has it always just been, I'm going to write whatever and just put it out there? And if people like it, cool. If
so
not, fuck them.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, but yeah. So I like I was kind of talking about. I think I was emailing you. When I was like 15 or 16, right? Like I heard "Si Monumentum" by Decibel the first time, right? I just kind of like tore into every aspect of that record, and then I realized, like, I realized, like, I started trying to back engineer how
Mm-hmm.
somebody did that. And I was just like, this is what I want to do with my life, basically. Like they're not they're able to like do whatever they want, like self-fund it. They don't have to deal with any extra logistics. They don't have to do they none of that shit. They just that's about made records. They like, I don't know, worked regular jobs or what the fuck. I don't. It just for me, there's just something that's almost. It's hard to explain, but like it. I just saw that and I was like, yeah, I know what I want to do with my life. So, I mean, for me, I feel like I'm still doing that. I'm still able to do that. I'm still in like good physical shape, enough to make these records. So
For sure.
that's to me, I couldn't be happier with the trajectory of SERPENT COLUMN and whatever what I've done in the past like 7 8 years.
Definitely. I mean, it's a hard question just because, like, what is success? And like it changes for every person. But it is interesting as far as like finding your purpose and stuff like that. Do you feel like you're sort of achieving your life's purpose, or do you feel like are you still sort of chasing that as well?
Not really because um, like I said, I already kind of figured it out early on. It's not the most making a record isn't as like new and sexy as it was maybe, but like it's still and that's good. That's a good thing because
Yeah,
like I've like tamed the process. It doesn't affect me negatively as much. because I just figured out how to manage it. Um, so, yeah.
Did it sort of affect you negatively? Like whether it's, you know, the process of trying to do something or, you know, maybe it's some sort of mental thing. Cause like I can understand like being a bit of like blocked, right? Whether it's you're trying to write a record and it's not coming out the way you want, or um, you know, maybe it's something you wanted to achieve and you haven't quite achieved that. I know some people, you know, want to chase that, right? They want to chase that career, I suppose. So you know, is that ever something that you like, maybe when you were 13 or something, and it sort of just is something you grew out of listening to Deathspell or whatever else?
Um, I mean, I realized that my own like the trajectory of what I was doing musically was gonna take its own shape, and I had to
Yeah,
like listen to and respect that. Like, I wasn't gonna go and start a label of my own. It's just too much, too many logistics.
it fucking is.
Yeah, I don't.
It's a
Yeah,
lot of money.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, and right now it costs what, like $3,000-4,000 to make a run of like 300 records. Like,
It's that's
it's just, yeah. And also, I didn't have like other musicians to work with, so I mean, it's, yeah. And when I was talking about more like the negative effects, I mean, some of those records, like, I just worked to the bone on, basically. Like,
yeah,
and
yeah,
if you can't neglect your physical health and your like mental health forever. Like, it's just gonna
to believe
you're
that, yeah,
you're gonna have to address all the damage that you're doing at some point. So there's a danger in that too.
totally,
Yeah, yeah.
100%. Um, it can be, it's especially if you set yourself up for um, a dream or anything like that, where it's like if it doesn't work out, then it's, you know, coming back to earth can be very hard for people, right? um, but or even just putting out a record and then you get some negative reviews or anything like that, I think can be quite disheartening for musicians. But I mean, depending on what your goal is, and I think that should sort of shift over time, or with the music that you write or anything like that. Um, I just think, you know, you find your way. Musicians sort of find their way to their own purpose, happiness, success, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, reception is gonna be whatever the
Out of
fuck.
your hands, yeah.
And like, honestly, the records that I thought would be more well received are never, like, it's always, I'm like, people like that EP that I just shat out. Like, that makes no I mean, it does. Like, I understand it. Like, people vibed with the like intensity of it and everything at the time because it came out like right when COVID hit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it there's records where I've spent like Ashes, or even like my first record, spent just so many untold hours on, was like hugely personally invested, and it's just kind of like the releases were just like not, it not what I expected. And it's like you get used to that though. Like, you get used to, at least for me, like, I had to like almost desensitize myself to that process. And also, well, I had to basically just like learn to not be too attached to my work.
Right.
Like, I think after, like right before I was starting to write Mirror in Darkness, I just like basically put my guitar away, like took off the strings, just like basically forced myself not to play any music. And I just made like paintings for like 2 months and threw them all out.
Okay.
I liked them. I liked like a lot of them, but still, like, just I had to force myself just to make myself like disattached to what I was doing. I think that helped.
It's a good exercise.
Yeah, and I
Just
mean, yeah, it's kind of like mindfulness meditation or something like
totally it becomes more about the process rather than the end result, which I think is healthy.
right, right. Yeah, I mean, I mean, it's just kind of like staring at your own like shit. It's like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
I
I've
know.
got my shitty painting behind me, so
Wait,
I
what?
said I've got my shitty painting behind me somewhere
Oh,
over there.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's fun. Um, but yeah, I mean, as an artist, you sort of have to deal with a lot of rejection and a lot of whether you're looking for a record label or even the promo stuff that we sort of talked about earlier, or if you're booking shows, anything like that, you have to be used to and accept the fact that if you want to achieve something, anything in life even, you're going to face a lot of rejection first. And I think honestly through music it's been healing for me, especially, to deal with outward or external rejections, right? And I think that's been a positive thing for me.
Yeah. What's your experience been like with SVNEATR?
It's been, I mean, honestly, it feels like every time we get something, right? Whether it's a tour or we jumped on a prosthetic for the new record and stuff like that. Every time we get sort of a step forward, it's like we have to kick in another door. So it's, there's a lot of barriers as far as doing what you want to do. And sometimes it's, we got this record label, but maybe the record didn't sell that well. Or we have this tour that we're on, and then half of it isn't, you know, uh, we're losing money on half of it, kind of a thing. Um, and I think it's just the process of sort of plowing through that regardless, has been something that the band I think has connected a bit on. But it is a pain. You are losing money the vast majority of times, especially in the early stages. So
Yeah, labels will dick you over, and like you'll get a bad night. Just shit will happen on tour. I've seen my friends go through that too, and especially right now, it's like
yeah,
it's not a good time for.
I
It's
don't know
not.
if there was ever a good time, but it's definitely worse now.
Yeah, it's hard either way you do it. Whenever you do it, it's just hard. Life's just hard.
It's true.
Yeah.
What makes it all worth it for you?
Um, I mean, I guess knowing that I got to just make records that I felt should exist. I didn't, I didn't involve other things in the process outside of the music, like looking for fame or notoriety, whatever the fuck. I mean that to me is, I'm happy looking back on that, and I'm sure I'll be happy in 10, 20 years or whatever.
That's wicked. I think we're gonna end it on this last question. What's next for you? What's next for Serpent Column and Theophanous as well?
Um, I mean, I'm always writing new material. I'm always practicing. I mean, I have a lot of Theophanous stuff that I'll probably wind up putting out as a record next year. After that, it's hard to tell. Probably, put out another Serpent Column, either an EP or a record.
Yeah, yeah.
But just don't know yet.
Do you have a lot of backlog of material or no?
No, I mean, I tend to try to not.
I'm with you.
But yeah, I mean, there's stuff that like the Theophanous stuff. It's easy to have a backlog, but it's nice because that's kind of just like a side project, basically.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, there's also stuff like there's some jams, like jam sessions that I've done with friends that have made it into demos or EPs that still haven't had the time to finish, or just like they got stuck in development hell, basically.
For sure.
There's always something to work on.
I'm with you there. I We keep a lot of backlog stuff, but I don't like going back to it. It feels like repeating, or like I feel like music should come from a place that is sort of more present than something that existed 5 years ago or something like that. So
Yeah, it's really hard to like get into the character of something that you started a long time ago, for sure.
that's the thing, connecting emotionally, or even just sort of, again, the material of whatever you're going through at a time period, I think is easier to accomplish in the moment. So Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining me on this. This has been really cool. And yeah, any final thoughts?
Um, I mean, not really. I mean, thanks for having me on. Thanks for the review. Thanks for the close listen to the record.
Totally.
Appreciate it.
It deserved a close listen for sure.
Thanks, man.
Awesome. All right. I will let you go.